The rain came down in sheets that night, drumming against the windshield like a warning. The sky was pitch black except for the flashes of lightning that lit up the long stretch of empty highway ahead. Lily Carter gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands, her knuckles pale against the cracked leather. Her heart raced as another contraction tore through her, sharper and closer than the last. She tried to steady her breathing, whispering to herself that everything would be fine, that she just needed to make it a few more miles. But deep down, she knew she was running out of time. The old sedan groaned beneath her, coughing smoke from the hood. The gas gauge hovered near empty, and every bump in the road made her wince. She had been driving for hours, trying to get away from a life that had turned into a nightmare. She didn't care where she ended up, she just needed to keep moving. But the storm had other plans. The wipers smeared the rain across the glass instead of clearing it, and the road signs had long since disappeared into the darkness. When the engine sputtered one final time and went silent, Lily's stomach sank. She twisted the key again and again, praying for a spark, but all she got was the hollow click of defeat. Panic surged in her chest. The baby kicked, as if reminding her she wasn't alone. Tears blurred her eyes as she looked around, searching for any sign of help, any light, any sign of life. That's when she saw it. A faint glow through the rain, a flickering neon sign just ahead. She forced the car door open, stepping into ankle-deep puddles. The cold bit through her soaked clothes, but she didn't stop. Each step was heavy, each breath a struggle. The neon light grew clearer, revealing the shape of an old wooden building with motorcycles lined up out front. The sign above the door buzzed in blue and red, the Iron Rooster. A biker bar. For a second, Lily hesitated. She'd never stepped foot in a place like that. The reputation of bikers, loud, tough, unpredictable, flashed through her mind, and fear tangled with the pain in her belly. But the next contraction hit hard, bending her double. She had no choice. She pressed one hand against her stomach and pushed through the door. The sound hit her first, music, laughter, clinking bottles, the low rumble of men's voices. Then everything stopped. Heads turned toward her, eyes narrowing in confusion and surprise. The warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the storm outside, but Lily shivered anyway. Water dripped from her hair, and her lips trembled as she tried to speak. The smell of smoke and beer filled her lungs. She opened her mouth but could barely find her voice. "Please," she finally managed to say, her voice breaking. "I need help, my car's dead, and my baby." Her sentence faded as another wave of pain rippled through her, her hand tightening around her belly. The laughter was gone now. The room had gone completely still. For a long moment, no one moved. The woman standing in the doorway didn't look like she belonged there. Her pale face, her soaked clothes, her trembling hands clutching at her swollen belly. The rough crowd of bikers just stared, caught between surprise and uncertainty. Then, from the far end of the bar, a deep voice rose above the silence. "Somebody get her a chair," said Bear, the club's president. His tone carried authority, the kind that made everyone react without question. Chairs scraped the floor, and one of the younger bikers hurried over with a towel. Lily sank into the seat, breathing hard, clutching her stomach as another contraction hit. The room shifted from amusement to concern in seconds. The men who had been laughing moments before now looked uneasy, fidgeting with their drinks. Bear approached slowly, his heavy boots thudding on the wooden floor. His presence was intimidating, tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard and arms covered in tattoos. But his eyes were calm. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice softer than anyone expected. Lily nodded weakly, tears running down her face. "My car, it broke down. I didn't know where to go. I think the baby's coming soon." A low murmur spread through the bar. One of the bikers whistled under his breath, and another muttered, "You gotta be kidding." But Bear ignored them. He turned toward the bar counter and barked, "Water, blankets, now." Within seconds, the place moved like an engine coming to life. Someone grabbed a pile of jackets to cover her, another fetched an old blanket from the back room, and a woman, who'd been sitting quietly near the jukebox, rushed over with a glass of water. Lily took a shaky sip, her hands trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. The young biker who'd brought the towel, Tyler, crouched beside her. "It's okay. You're safe here," he said, trying to smile, though his voice wavered. The rain pounded against the windows, and thunder rolled across the sky. Outside, the world was chaos, but inside the bar, everything revolved around this frightened stranger who'd stumbled into their world. Bear pulled a chair up beside her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she said softly. "Lily Carter." He nodded, repeating it under his breath. "All right, Lily, we're gonna help you, you hear me?" She nodded, though fear still lingered in her eyes. He could see how close she was to breaking. How alone she'd been on that road. He turned toward his crew. "Nobody's leaving. Roads are flooded anyway. We stay and make sure she's okay." One of the older bikers frowned. "Boss, we don't know what to do with." Bear cut him off with a glare. "Then we learn. Fast." The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't tension, it was focus. The rough crowd that had once seemed dangerous now moved with surprising gentleness. Jackets became blankets, tables were cleared to make space, and someone dimmed the lights near the door. Lily's breathing steadied as she looked around the room, full of strangers. For the first time that night she felt a flicker of hope. The storm outside grew louder, the wind howling like a living thing against the walls of the old bar. Inside, the bikers moved clumsily but with purpose, gathering whatever they could find that might help. Someone brought in a pot of hot water from the kitchen, another found an old first aid kit with half the supplies missing, and Tyler ripped up clean T-shirts to use as towels. Lily sat in the middle of it all, trembling, her hair plastered to her forehead, breathing fast as the pain came and went in sharp waves. Bear hovered close by, trying to stay calm though he had no idea what he was doing. Every time Lily groaned, he looked toward the door as if help might magically appear from the storm. Then a voice came from the corner, steady and certain. "I know what to do." Everyone turned to see Marge, the woman who had been behind the bar all night, step forward. She was in her late 50s, with silver hair pulled back into a loose braid and tired eyes that had seen too much of life. "I used to be a nurse," she said, wiping her hands on a rag, "and I've delivered more than a few babies in my time." Relief spread across Bear's face as he exhaled the breath he'd been holding. "Then you're in charge, Marge. Tell us what to do." She moved quickly, taking control of the room like she had been waiting for this her whole life. "You," she said, pointing to Tyler, "boil that water again, make sure it's clean. You, get me all the clean rags you can find. And Bear, stay with her. Keep her calm, keep her breathing." No one questioned her authority. The same men who had spent years following club orders now jumped to obey her, rushing around like soldiers under command. The air in the bar had changed. The smell of smoke and beer faded beneath the scent of hot water and adrenaline. Lily's contractions came closer together, and her breathing quickened. Bear knelt beside her, his large hands awkwardly patting her shoulder. "You're doing good, Lily," he murmured, his deep voice surprisingly gentle. She tried to smile through the pain. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. "Beer," he said. "Like the animal?" she asked, gasping. "Yeah." He grinned faintly, "but not as scary as I look." The small laugh that escaped her lips seemed to steady her for a moment. Marge worked fast, spreading blankets on the floor and laying out what few supplies she had. "All right, sweetheart," she said, crouching beside Lily. "We're going to do this together. When I say breathe, you breathe. When I say push, you push. You're safe here." Lily nodded, gripping Bear's hand so tightly he winced but didn't pull away. The bikers gathered around quietly, their faces a mixture of awe and fear, men who had faced down fights and fires, but were now watching the miracle of life unfold in their own bar. The rain hammered on, thunder shaking the windows as the night turned heavier with every passing minute. The room had gone quiet except for the soft cries of the newborn and the rhythmic patter of rain on the roof. The bikers stood frozen, unsure whether to cheer, cry, or simply breathe again after what they had just witnessed. Marge wrapped the tiny baby in a clean towel and handed her gently to Lily, who looked down at her daughter with disbelief and wonder. Bear leaned against the counter, exhausted but smiling, as if the whole world had just tilted back into place. For a brief moment, everything felt calm, peaceful, almost sacred. Then headlights cut through the rain outside, bright and harsh. The sound of an engine revving shattered the stillness. Bear's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell's out there?" he muttered. Tyler glanced out the window, his expression darkening. "It's a truck," he said quietly. "Old Ford, black." Lily's body tensed instantly, her fingers tightened around her baby. "No," she whispered, panic flooding her face. "It's him." The front door flew open before anyone could react. A man stumbled in, drenched, wild-eyed, his voice slurred with anger. "Where is she?" he shouted, scanning the room. "Where's Lily?" The bikers moved as one, instinctively forming a wall between the stranger and the mother. Bear stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "You need to calm down, friend. You're not welcome here." The man's eyes locked on Lily and his face twisted with rage. "You think you can hide from me," he snarled. "You took my kid, you." He didn't finish. Bear's hand came up, not touching him, but firm enough to stop him cold. "You've had your chance," Bear said. "You don't get another." The man, Jason, tried to push past, but the bikers closed in. Tyler grabbed his arm, another biker blocked his path. "You got no business here," one of them growled. Jason struggled, shouting curses, but it was no use. He was outnumbered and outmatched. Lily was crying now, clutching her baby close, whispering soft words to calm her. The tension in the room was heavy, electric, and dangerous. "Let him go," Lily said finally, her voice trembling. Bear turned toward her, surprised. "Please," she whispered. "I don't want any more fighting. Just let him go." Bear's jaw tightened. He stared at Jason for a long time, his expression unreadable. Finally, he stepped aside. "You heard the lady. Get out before I change my mind." Jason spat on the floor, his eyes full of hate, but something in Bear's stare stopped him from saying another word. He turned and stormed out into the rain, his boots splashing through puddles, the sound of his engine fading into the distance. The bar was silent again. The bikers stood still, shoulders tense, waiting to make sure he was gone. Marge moved back to Lily's side, checking on the baby, murmuring softly. Bear exhaled slowly, the tension in his chest easing as the storm outside began to quiet, leaving only the sound of the baby's soft breathing against her mother's chest. Morning sunlight filtered weakly through the cracked blinds of the iron rooster, touching the worn wood and casting soft golden lines across the bar. The storm had passed, leaving behind puddles that reflected the pale blue of a new sky. The place looked different now. Less like a biker hangout and more like a shelter that had witnessed something sacred. Empty bottles and damp towels lay scattered around, but no one seemed to care. Lily sat in one of the booths, wrapped in a clean blanket, her baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was a calmness about her face that hadn't been there the night before. It was the calm that comes after surviving the impossible. Marge poured her a mug of warm tea and set it down gently in front of her. "You did good, sweetheart," she said softly, touching her shoulder. "Real good." Lily smiled faintly, glancing down at her baby. "I didn't think I'd make it," she admitted. "If it wasn't for you all." Her voice trailed off, but Marge shook her head. "You don't owe us a thing, honey. You just take care of that little one." A bear walked in from outside, wiping grease from his hands. He'd been working on Lily's car since dawn, and now the sound of the engine rumbling faintly outside meant he had succeeded. "She's ready to roll," he said, standing by the table. "She won't go far, but she'll get you where you need to go." Lily looked up at him, her eyes full of gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. Bear reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small white envelope, sliding it across the table. "This'll help with gas and food," he said. Lily shook her head immediately. "I can't take your money," she whispered. Bear gave her a look that was gentle but firm. "You already did. It's from all of us. Nobody here wants it back." Tyler came over, holding a little stuffed bear he'd dug out of a dusty box from the bar's old lost and found. "For her," he said shyly. Lily took it with trembling hands, pressing it against her baby's chest. "Thank you," she whispered, smiling through tears. She looked down at her daughter, the tiniest smile tugging at her lips. "I think I'll name her Hope," she said softly. "Because that's what you gave me tonight." The bikers around her went quiet, the weight of her words settling over them. Bear nodded slowly, his voice rough when he finally spoke. "That's a good name," he said. By mid-morning, the air smelled of damp earth and coffee. The sound of engines starting up in the distance echoed faintly as the day began for the rest of the world. Inside the bar, though, time seemed to move slower. Lily cradled her baby and looked around the room that had become her refuge, memorizing every face, every detail, every kindness that had carried her through the night.